Imagine a trusted institution, tasked with safeguarding a family's wealth, innocently handing that entire fortune over to the exact wrong people. All it takes is one carefully calculated deception. Consider the facts of the Hallmark Bank problem. The bank acts as trustee for a substantial trust, with a woman named Camilla holding a life interest. When Camilla decides she wants the capital distributed immediately, she enlists her art teacher, Kyle, to forge a marriage certificate. She presents this fake document to the bank to unlawfully surrender her life interest. The bank, completely unaware of the forgery, distributes the capital. Half goes to Camilla's son Harry, who immediately spends it. The other half goes to her daughter Lucinda for a house deposit. The legitimate remainder beneficiary, the charity Oxfam, is left with absolutely nothing. The bank breached its duty by distributing the trust property to the wrong people. But because the bank acted innocently, based on a convincing forgery, Oxfam's best path to recovery isn't necessarily suing the trustee. Instead, they need to pursue the strangers to the trust, the third parties who either facilitated the deception or ended up with the money. Pursuing these strangers requires navigating a highly specific maze of legal rules. Whether Oxfam can extract cash compensation or reclaim the physical property itself will depend entirely on measuring the exact state of mind of each recipient and deploying precise asset tracing mechanisms. To target third parties implicated in a breach of trust, beneficiaries must operate within a strict legal framework. That framework breaks down into 3 distinct avenues: equitable personal claims, equitable proprietary claims, and finally, common law restitution. The distinction between the first two is critical. A personal claim seeks monetary compensation directly from the individual based on their wrongful behavior. A proprietary claim ignores personal guilt entirely and sues to recover the exact physical asset wherever it currently resides. Securing a victory under any of these avenues hinges on a fiercely litigated spectrum. The court will scrutinize the third party's exact state of mind at the precise moment the breach occurred. This table outlines equitable personal claims against third parties. We start with accessory liability, or dishonest assistance. To prove it, a claimant must establish 3 elements: a primary breach of fiduciary duty, active assistance by the third party, and objective dishonesty. The definitive test for that final element was cemented in Royal Brunei Airlines v. Tan. The core legal issue here was twofold. Must the primary trustee have acted fraudulently for a third party to be liable? And what exact standard of dishonesty applies to that accessory? The facts involved Borneo Leisure Travel, a company that held flight ticket revenue on trust for Royal Brunei Airlines. The company's director, Mr. Tan, misapplied that money, using it for his own business operations instead of keeping it in a separate trust account. The Privy Council established a clear rule. First, the trustee's state of mind is irrelevant. The breach itself can be innocent. Second, for the accessory, dishonesty is an objective standard. The court asks how a hypothetical honest person would have acted, given the facts the defendant subjectively knew at the time. This objective standard for civil proceedings was reaffirmed by the Supreme Court in Ivy v. Genton Casinos and applied in Group 7. The resulting precedent is firm. A defendant is liable if they know they are assisting in an illegal or wrongful scheme. They do not need to know the specific details of the trust or the precise mechanics of the fraud. The second personal claim targets the people who actually get the money, recipient liability, or knowing receipt. This requires a breach of duty, the stranger receiving the property for their own benefit, and a specific degree of knowledge regarding the property's origins. The required state of mind for this claim was defined in BCCI v. Accessory. The issue the court had to resolve was exactly how much knowledge a recipient must possess to trigger personal liability. The Accessory ruling bypasses the strict dishonesty test. Instead, it requires that the recipient's knowledge makes it unconscionable for them to retain the property. Mr. Accessory heard rumors of BCCI irregularities, that this wasn't enough to trigger unconscionability. Furthermore, mere constructive notice is insufficient. Here is a critical point for legal analysis. Do not mix these tests up. Applying the TAN dishonesty standard to a recipient or the Accessory unconscionability standard to an accessory is a fatal error. If a beneficiary cannot prove the flawed state of mind required for either of these personal claims, their sole remaining option is to abandon the individual and hunt down the physical asset itself. That hunt leads us to equitable proprietary claims. This avenue relies heavily on tracing rules to recover the exact physical property. It is particularly crucial when the defendant who stole the money is bankrupt and a personal claim would yield nothing. This flowchart illustrates the fundamental bifurcation in tracing rules. For wrongdoers, courts apply harsh tracing rules, like re-hallet, allowing claimants an equitable lien. Conversely, for innocent volunteers who gave no consideration, a proprietary claim to recover the asset still survives. When an innocent volunteer mixes trust funds with their own to buy a new asset, the rule in Foskett applies. Because both parties are innocent, equity enforces strict equality. They share the resulting asset pro rata, based precisely on their initial financial contributions. However, the innocent volunteer has an ultimate shield, the re-diplock defense. The legal issue here is whether tracing can be completely blocked if enforcing it would produce a highly inequitable outcome for an innocent party. The court in re-diplock established that it can. Tracing was denied because forcing innocent charities to sell the land they already owned just to satisfy a charge for improvements funded by mistaken trust money would deny them equality of treatment. Equity's true power lies in this flexibility. It wields harsh tracing rules like a hammer against wrongdoers, but uses a careful scale to balance the rights of competing innocents. Finally, we must briefly consider a third legal avenue, common law restitution, based on the principle of unjust enrichment. This diagram maps the core parameters of a restitution claim. Its advantage is strict liability. The claimant only needs to establish receipt. But limitations exist. It requires strict common law tracing, and the claimant must hold actual legal title to the property. Restitution is also subject to the change of position defense, highlighted in Lipkin-Gorman v. Carpnail. Here, a casino received stolen money in good faith. The court ruled if an innocent defendant spends the received funds in an exceptional and irretrievable manner, compelling them to make restitution would be unjust. Because trust beneficiaries only hold equitable title, not legal title, they are almost entirely locked out of common law restitution. This forces them to rely squarely on the equitable personal and proprietary claims we just mapped out. Let's apply these rules to the Hallmark Bank crisis for Oxfam. First, Harry. As an innocent volunteer, he lacks the unconscionable knowledge required for a personal claim. He spent the funds, completely dissipating the money. No proprietary claim exists. Oxfam gets nothing from him. Lucinda is an innocent volunteer, avoiding personal liability, but she mixed the trust money with her own for a house deposit. She cannot claim the re-diplock defense since she acquired a new asset. Under Foskett, Oxfam can claim a pro rata share of her house. Finally, we assess Tamila and Kyle's actions. Since neither holds the funds, Oxfam must pursue them for personal liability as accessories to the breach. Applying the objective standard from Royal Brunei v. Tan, Camilla instigated the fraud, and Kyle actively forged the certificate. An honest person doesn't manufacture false documents to execute a scheme. Both acted dishonestly and are personally liable for the full financial loss. Mastering third-party liability requires exact precision. You must isolate the defendant's legal status, match their mental state to the precise equitable test, and rigorously trace the physical asset to secure a remedy.